Hey students, I missed y'all today. It'll be a bit before we see each other, at least this week. I figured it was only fitting since there's a hurricane coming. Hopefully it doesn't really hit us because that's going to be awful. I am going to read I Survived, Hurricane Katrina, 2005. It's up to you if you listen to it or not. It's up to you if you tune in and pay attention to the book. I will post it in the Google Classroom. I will probably read a chapter or two at a time and post each one, and you're welcome to listen to it just to have a book to listen to read. Once we start AR again, you'll be able to take a test over it too. It's worth 2 points, not a whole lot, but it's significant, enough to get you somewhere. So, Chapter 1, Monday, August 29th, 2005, 7 a.m., the Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina was ripping apart New Orleans, and 11-year-old Barry Tucker was lost and alone, clinging to an oak tree for dear life. He had fallen off the roof of his house and had been swept away in the floodwater. The raging currents had tossed and twisted him, almost tearing him to pieces. He would have drowned, but somehow Barry had grabbed hold of the tree. With every bit of strength in his body, he had pulled himself out of the water and wrapped his arms and legs around the trunk. Now he was holding on, with no idea of what to do next. Wind howled around him. Rain hammered down, and all Barry could see was water. Swirling, foaming, rushing water. The water had washed away his whole neighborhood. Pieces of it floated by. In the dirty gray light, Barry saw jagged hunks of wood, shattered glass, a twisted bicycle, a refrigerator, a stuffed penguin, a mattress covered with a pink blanket. He tried hard not to imagine what else was in that water, or what had happened to all of his neighbors, and his mom and dad, and his little sister, Cleo. What if they had all fallen into the water too? What if... Wait! What was that sound? Was someone calling his name? Dad! Barry screamed. Mom! Cleo! No. It was just the wind shrieking. Even the sky was terrified of this storm. Barry was shaking now. Tears stung his eyes. And then he heard a new sound, a cracking and groaning above the wind and rain. He stared in shock at what was floating in the water. A house. Or what was left of it. One side was torn off. It moved through the flood slowly, turning. Its blown-out windows seemed to stare at Barry. The splintered wood looked like teeth in a wide open mouth, and it was coming right at him. That's the end of the first chapter. So, he's 11, so he's y'all's age, and can you imagine being at your home and a hurricane coming and it just ripping apart and flooding not only the hurricane, but it's flooding everything, and it's literally moving a house along in the water, and you have no idea where your family is. He's lucky he didn't drown. This is considered realistic fiction, so the story, the boy Barry, is not real. But there were many Barrys from Hurricane Katrina. Many people who went through this. I guess I'll go ahead and read Chapter 2 since that was a pretty short chapter. So Chapter 2, 21 hours earlier, Sunday, August 28th, 2005, 10 a.m., the Tucker's house, the Lower Ninth Ward, New Orleans, Louisiana. Barry sat on the steps of his front porch. His best friend Jay huddled next to him. Jay wanted to see the drawing rolled up in Barry's hands. Show me, Jay said, leaning so close Barry could smell egg sandwich on his breath. Barry elbowed him back, laughing. He knew Jay was excited. They both were. The next day was the deadline for Acclaim Comic Books' Create a Superhero contest. For the past 3 weeks, Barry and Jay had been working non-stop on their creation. They had come up with everything together. Their hero's name, his costume, even his secret star, which was the source of his amazing powers. But it had been Barry's job to draw him. He'd stayed up past midnight the last 3 nights, adding his finishing touches. Okay, Barry said, clearing his throat, and standing up like an announcer facing an anxious crowd. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Akivo. He unrolled the paper and watched Jay's eyes get wider behind his scratched-up glasses. Barry's cheeks heated up. He had worked hard on the drawing. Of course, he would never admit it to Jay, but it was almost like Akiva was his brother. A 7-foot-tall brother with bulging muscles, hawk wings, titanium armor, and eyes that could see through walls. Jay rose to his feet. "That's amazing," he said in a shocked whisper. "The wings look real. And that fire." He pointed to the flames coming out of Akivo's silver boots. Barry had worked for 3 hours on those flames, mixing orange and red and yellow with a bit of blue until they looked like they would burn your fingers if you touched them. They both stood there for a minute, staring at the drawing. Then Jay started jumping up and down. "We're going to win the contest," Jay yelled. "We are going to win the contest." Barry started jumping too. He knew that hundreds of people were entering, and not only kids. Some people drew on computers. Others made videos. All Barry had were the colored pencils Mom and Dad had bought him for his last birthday. Still, Barry was a believer. He had gotten that from his mom. And at that minute, Barry let himself believe that he and Jay just might win first place. $250 to split in the comic book starring Akivo that Acclaim would create. Barry and Jay loved comic books. They had been collecting them since they had learned to read. "We're going to be rich," Jay sang. "And famous," said Barry. They were so busy jumping and dancing and hooting, they didn't notice Abe McKay and his killer dog, Cruz, watching from the sidewalk. Abe's laughter got their attention. Abe was a huge guy, almost twice the size of Barry. His booming laugh practically shook the ground. Barry and Jay froze. The hair on Barry's arm stood up straight. Jay's cocoa skin turned gray. Abe was in middle school, just a year older than Barry and Jay. There's a little picture of Abe and his killer dog, Cruz. They used to all be friends, but Abe had changed since his dad had gone away 2 years earlier. Now he and his grandma lived alone. The McKay's house used to be one of the nicest in their neighborhood. It was painted bright sky blue. Abe's grandma used to have a yard full of flowers you could smell a block away. But now the garden was dead and the house was gloomy. Abe didn't go to school much anymore, and he'd started hanging around the older boys whose vrooming motorcycles kept everyone up at night. And then there was his new dog. He looked like a big mutt. He had a square head, and the tips of his pointy ears flopped over. But Abe said that he was a special breed from Asia, trained by the Chinese army, and that his jaw was strong enough to bite through metal. "He's trained to kill," Abe had bragged. "On my command, he goes right for the neck. One bite is all it takes." "Why'd you stop dancing?" Abe asked now, spitting onto the sidewalk. "Cruz loves to dance." He bent down to unhook the dog's leash. "Go!" Abe shouted. "Go get him, Cruz!" So far we have 3 characters. So we have Barry, who was the main one. We started off, and Barry was in the floodwaters. The house was coming straight for him. His family was missing. Okay, and then we're rewinding back. I think it was just 21 hours. We rewinded back 21 hours to where he was carefree. He was with his best friend Jay. They were talking about a comic book competition they were entering. They were hoping to win money, hoping to win this comic company, Acclaim, would print their own comics. Anyway, so it shows you that they're carefree before the hurricane happened. They probably didn't even realize the hurricane was going to happen. And then it introduces at the end a character named Abe, who was an old friend of theirs who went through some troubles, and now he's kind of turned into a tough guy, probably a little scary to Barry and Jay. And that's chapter 1 and 2 of I Survived Hurricane Katrina 2005. And I know y'all weren't born in 2005, but I had just graduated high school. I was a year out of high school. So if you want to try and figure out how old I was, or am now.